All right, hello, and welcome to this new type of episode type, I guess I should say, playlist if it should ever continue in the future. In this type of episode, me and E are going to be talking about the matchups, our score predictions, kind of looking at the teams and explaining why our scores are the way they are. Before I continue, as we go on, Mr. E here will be going after me, so it'll be Cole, then E. So if you feel like you don't want to listen to me, and you feel like the only good advice is from E, we'll put in the timestamps, and you can skip right over to E's opinion. It's probably the better one anyways. And then, yeah, that way you guys have a better viewing experience. But I am Cole, and this is E. And I guess
Hello.
before we start, Mr. E, do you have anything to say before we begin?
I'm just excited to watch these games instead of talking about them. But, for now, it's exciting to theorize and see who ends up being right. Put some money down on it, go to DraftKings, go to Vegas and put in the overs or unders based off of our predictions.
Absolutely. I already put my entire mortgage on San Antonio upsetting Portland, by the way. I don't know why, there's no connection here, but I, I do think that's a good bet, I think I'll also take VB over Wichita. I think that's also a good bet. I'm gonna put my firstborn's life savings in that one. I think that'll pay off well.
Oh yeah, I put $1 on Austin over Columbus, and I think I'm getting 5,000.
You're getting 5,500 back right off the bat. Well, for our first matchup of the playoffs, we have Orlando at St. Louis. Two notes: we must state that it will have snow and there will be no wind, so it'll be a perfect snow game. Probably affecting some type of droppage, maybe some pass plays, potentially some fumbles, but kind of in the long run of things, I think it's going to be pretty simplistic. It's going to be a defensive game, and I think Orlando's still going to bring the heat. I think St. Louis is going to have to kind of adapt to this. I would say they're overperforming, right? The word is blanking on my mind because, I'm pretty dumb, but basically, they're performing above expectations. They're playing above their weight class, as it would be. And I think St. Louis, off the bye, they haven't really adjusted much, it looks like, in terms of play calling, playbook. So I think Orlando's going to keep running the same thing. I think the quarterback for Orlando, Tremoni Geechee, I think he's going to have a pretty decent day. When you look at the QB stats for the playoffs, he was really great across the board. 71, 43% completion rate. He had one touchdown, one interception, but that's okay. 196 yards, which was sixth for all quarterbacks in the playoffs. And of course, you can't really look at the St. Louis quarterback because they haven't played yet. But like I said, I think this quarterback is really going to help move this Orlando offense along just enough to get past St. Louis. I think, in my opinion, from watching all the games that St. Louis has played, they kind of get ahead a lot, and so the other team has to pass a lot, so it puts them in a one-dimensional box, and it kind of sets St. Louis up for a lot of success to win those games, but obviously I think Orlando's defense is going to hold them to a pretty tight game. I will say right off the bat, because like I said, these two teams, it's just going to kind of come down to defense in my mind. There could be some stats, but as far as we both know, Orlando overachieves and their defense kind of carries them, and St. Louis is the offensive juggernaut that we know. But my score personally is I think Orlando's going to take it 24-21, and I think the defense is going to possibly be able to seal it on a final game attempt winning drive by St. Louis, and I think that'll propel Orlando into the conference round of the playoffs. So, Mr. E, I will now hand it over to you for your prediction.
Yeah, I got to agree with you on the Orlando win there, except I think the game script's going to go a little different. I see Orlando going up early with a touchdown. Tremoni Geechee's going to pull the unexpected. As you mentioned, he's going to have a good game. Lorenzo Martin and Justin Langford, a little bit of Barrett Galbraith action. Last week, we saw Cameron Brown and Sean Miles really shine, but That's what St. Louis is going to be expecting. So Geechee is going to light it up, get a touchdown off the bat. There's going to be a huge defensive stand. They're going to get another touchdown, go up 14 to maybe 3 at the half, and then, play with our feelings a little bit, but ultimately win 27-17. The wide receivers and tight end that I mentioned are going to have some stellar stats. However, it will not go unpunished. Javonte Livermore is going to have at least 2 sacks on Tre'Money Geechee. And we're probably going to see some nice defensive, some defended passes, maybe an interception from Matthew Abraham. They got some good guys back there in the defensive back core. Wayne McMaster, former interception leader. So the St. Louis defensive backs they're experienced, they're skilled, but I think they'll be caught a little off guard by just the expertise that Tre'Money Geechee brings, even as a 23-year-old, to this game. Cody Tobin, on the other hand, contrasting with Geechee, is not going to have a good game. I think that if he ever gets the ball off, LaShawn Randolph, Randall Holly, they'll see some catches, but we're going to see mostly a Josiah Bell and Jaquan Winters led St. Louis offense. I can see Bell getting a touchdown. We might see a defensive touchdown, shocker, but I don't see more than 2 touchdowns coming from St. Louis's side whatsoever. Orlando advancing to the conference championship for the first time in their team's history. Should be interesting to see, that game in the conference championship against the winner of the Wichita, Virginia Beach game. So that's my piece on the Orlando St. Louis matchup.
That was very insightful. That was incredible. And if they head to the Atlantic Championship and or Conference Championship, they would be facing either Wichita or Virginia Beach, and they would either be hosting Wichita or they would be at Virginia Beach, in which case, either way, that's still a monumental milestone for Trey Farrow Gaming, the owner of Orlando. And I think from there, that's a lot of momentum you can bring into the next season. Before we head to the next matchup, though, I would like to point out that Cody Tobin of St. Louis, he is, in fact, 18th in completion percent with a 57.6%. He's ranked 13th in yards. He is ranked number 3 in passing touchdowns, but he's also tied 7th in interceptions with 6. So it's kind of like a Jekyll and Hyde type of situation when you look at these stats. He's not really that great at completing passes, but once he does, touchdowns galore, it seems, right off the stat sheet. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's going to be a very interesting game to watch. And I'm actually I really like your score of 27-17. I think if it becomes a 10-point game, I do think it'll be because that defense has scored a touchdown, like you said, and put the icing on the cake towards the end of the fourth quarter. I definitely do agree with that one. So we'll head on over to the next matchup, a rematch actually from the regular season. San Antonio at Portland, and this time Portland now being the home team. The weather will be overcast and, again, no wind, so we're getting very lucky throughout these playoffs. During the regular season, there was tons and tons of games with lots of wind, heavy wind, light wind. San Antonio has actually only played, I would want to say, less than 5 games with no wind or light wind. They've played mostly in heavy wind, so this could bode well for their new starting quarterback, Chris Stallings. But as we head into dive into the insightful part of this, which, like I said, E will give more of that than I will be able to. We'll look at these 2 quarterbacks. However, Tyler Weber will not be in the picture, but Ryan Davis will be. Ryan Davis is number 4 in quarterback rating, number 1 in completion percent at 66.5, tied 7th for touchdowns with 14, tied number 4 with interceptions at 3. And this interception does go where the less interceptions you throw, the higher you're ranked. So, for example, Tremaine Geechee, apologies, is tied number 1 with 0. But as you can see, Ryan Davis of Portland is an incredible talent. However, we also must look over at Chris Stallings' performance. He was number 1 in quarterback rating with 116.3. He was number 1 in completions, but number 4 in attempts. He had a number 2 ranked completion percent at almost 69%. Nice. Number 1 in passing yards, 272. Number 1 in touchdowns, and he was tied number 1 for 0 interceptions. And he averaged the longest pass per attempt and completion. So, quite the performance, I would say, from the quarterback. And that's not even getting into San Antonio's, kind of smash mouth style that they do run with Ramon Gooden and Devon Bronson. Now, they are missing, of course, their second string cornerback, Willie Malone Jr. He'll be out until next week. They also lost DeMarcus Poole, their secondary defensive tackle, who is still a starter. He'll be out till the offseason, so they've lost a lot of depth on their defensive tackle side, because up next is Khalil Wooden, who is a rookie, mind you, and has not played a single snap all season. So that will be an interesting prospect. But of course, then you head on over to Portland, and I mean, let's just talk about Portland, right? Like, they have so many top end talented players. Like, I believe they've got 3 or 4 players all pegged as elite statuses across the league. They've got a bunch of superstar wide receivers, 4 of them, in fact. If you ask me, I think this game is going to be a pretty close one again. I do want to state that, in my personal opinion, the last time these two teams met up, it was the closest of close games until the forced fumble. It was a strip sack fumble on Tyler Weber. Then that led up to more points and then more points, and it was a lot closer of a game than the score would indicate. So that's why, me personally, even with a 13-point advantage for Portland based off their last time these two teams met, I will say Portland wins it out on a field goal, 31-28. And now I will hand it over to you, Mr. E.
Yeah, the field goal kicker, the leg from Jack Tomlinson is going to undeniably be a factor in this game. I see him getting, at least 2 field goals against San Antonio. And you mentioned Willie Malone Jr., of course, being hurt tragically in that last game against Portland. Some Bounty Gate stirrings about that injury. Jaquante Bradford still under investigation from that injury. But on the other side of things, you have left tackle Connor Killeen. I mean, he's one of the best offensive linemen in the league. So when you look at San Antonio, you think, what do they need to do to stop Portland? You think stop the pass offense, and oh no, one of their defensive backs is hurt. But on the other side of things, for Portland, what do you want to do if you want to capitalize on that pass offense that pass defense as you pass it a lot, but with less protection for Ryan Davis and what's already a pretty, subpar offensive line overall. It's kind of like it cancels each other out. So I agree with you that it will be a very close game, a dynamic offense with the, unexpected start from Chris Stallings, who just put on a clinic last week. He will be passing it a lot. You'll see some Cedric Vaughn action. You'll see some Michael McCloskey action. I actually think McCloskey racks up 2 touchdowns on the game. And I think that Gooden and Bronson might get 1 each. I don't think that they'll be held to a field goal. I think Fannin Steele gets a nice little rest day, whenever the game happens. I think he gets to only kick extra points, save his leg for the championship, because I think San Antonio wins it 28-27 in a nail biter, potentially a last-second touchdown from San Antonio. I believe that the reigning champs have a good chance of going back to it. The unfortunate part about their odds next week is that they do face either the Austin Stars, who they have a playoff history as well as a regular season history with, or the Columbus Senators, who at this point in the season seem pretty unstoppable, but I do see San Antonio getting another stab at it and winning against Portland this week.
You stated it right there. It's going to be a vicious road for San Antonio, whether they win. It's either going to be the team they have a tied record with in the regular season, or it's going to be the team that has haunted them when they played in the playoffs. Of course, everyone knows about the punt return touchdown on the final seconds of the championship game for the Pacific in the first season, in which Austin obviously went on to win the NAGA. And of course, as we all know, San Antonio then returned the favor in the following season, winning it again. So that'll be interesting to see. Can we have another Southwest team win the championship again? That would be 3 years in a row. And I think the commissioner then would have to look into possibly dividing this division up, as you can't have all 3 championships hold up into one division. But I will state, however, the current chances and predictions of their supercomputer of the NAGA, it's tied. It's quite literally half the time San Antonio will have a 51% chance. The other time, Portland will have a 51% chance. So this game will be about as close as can be, despite San Antonio losing 2 very crucial defenders on the back end. I think a lot of people are looking at Matt McDonough to, of course, put the entire team on his back once again. And I do believe that they will continue having Matt McDonough call defensive plays on the field after, of course, all those firings that occurred on the offensive side of the ball. So it will be interesting to see how that occurs, as last week Matt McDonough called the plays against Albuquerque, almost shutting them out outside of a few broken plays. So it will be extremely interesting to see how these two teams fare, especially since now San Antonio reinvigorated, looking for another run, and Portland obviously looking to avenge the broken leg from last year. And of course, if you remember last season, San Antonio was the number 2 seed, and Portland had to go there. So San Antonio now getting the reverse section of that, heading to a rested, well-deserved bye by Portland. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next match, and I think this is the match that everyone kind of has an eye on for electric plays, kind of in any sort of way, more so for one specific team, that is the Wichita Wranglers at the Virginia Beach Mariners. And I'll be upfront with it. I think this Wichita offense, they have struggled a lot. I think Kreutzer, after showing incredible skill and flash in the Pro Bowl last season, he's back to his normal team. I think that's kind of shaken him a bit. You know, you go from all this great talent around you, looking like the best in the world. Now you're back with your team, and there's obviously a drop-off, and he's been trying to work with what he's got. He obviously got them in the playoffs. They're now in the divisional round, but Virginia Beach is here for a reason. Virginia Beach went to the NAGA championship last year. Virginia Beach is the number 1 seed again. Virginia Beach is kind of everything that you expect them to be season in and out. It's obviously because of great moves in the offseason and great plays during the regular season. But of course, we must also talk about, in this matchup, they're the only game with perfect weather. No wind, no rain, no snow, no overcast. It's the perfect day. However, I must also point out that Wichita's offense, once again, is quite interesting, to say the least. Virginia Beach, obviously, hosting a wide variety of talented players, superstars all over this roster, players playing above their normal level across the board. I mean, obviously, we got to talk about Corey Marshall, the quarterback, doing it all. Eric Walker leading his team the whole way. Kamani Moore basically being a 1A, 1B type of running back with Walker. Then, of course, Tyler Powers, Shakir Burns. Those two guys are just immense talents. Then, of course, you have the offensive line that looks like it should be the premier line for any team, with Jason Trainer and Marquise Gilchrist obviously running that entire line. And then you look at their defense, and the defense is a bit underrated, if you ask me. I know their defense is rated appropriately, but I mean, you look at the defense, and there's not a single elite talent within this defense, and yet they all elevate themselves to play as such, right? Marcus Aiken, the superstar outside linebacker, is probably the closest thing you'll get to an elite talent, besides Mr. Sean Tucker, of course, who many peg as highly talented, but they think he's just a normal star within the league. Then, of course, in the back end, you got George Williams, Jeremiah Clain holding up that secondary. But you do have to look at how there are major injuries. Strong safety Julius Kelsey, Malcolm Riley, the defensive back, and of course, the right guard Damian Irwin, who was a pretty good anchor for that offensive line. But again, they're pretty talented across the board. So, I mean, you can't really ask too much for the backups because they've been doing what they've been doing all season. And of course, obviously, Wichita with David Kreutzer. But I have to say, outside of David Kreutzer and David Owolabi, I haven't seen too much this season. I know there's been a couple of defensive end and, of course, Sharif Wilson sightings. But outside of that, I mean, they've been kind of coasting. They got here pretty well on their own. I think their record is what it is. They beat Memphis, obviously, but I think they're going to walk into a team that's just way more talented, way more capable, and ready to kind of, knock their heads off. But before I hand it over to E, I do want to state that Kreutzer Kreutzer was number 3 for playoffs with 54.5% completion rate, number 5 in yards, 204. He had a touchdown and an interception, so he wasn't exactly too great. But during the regular season, he was number 25 in completion percent, so he's actually the worst out of these playoff quarterbacks. He actually is worse than Tyler Weber, believe that or not. He is number 18 in yards. He's tied 7th in passing touchdowns. He's tied 10th with interceptions with 9. So this is another Jekyll and Hyde situation. You've got 14 touchdowns. That's great, but he turns the ball over, and that's not exactly great. He does have a 81.5 quarterback rating, which again is a 26th rank in a 24 league QB class. So I do think eventually this Virginia Beach, led by Corey Marshall, is just going to take it over. Corey Marshall isn't exactly, pop off the stats quarterback either. But I do want to say I think he's done an incredible job this year. I think, almost 2,000 yards, 10 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, tied for 5th. And ranked 21 quarterback rating of 85.2. So I think he can get the job done. I think he's a lot better of a quarterback, obviously, than David Kreutzer, team schematic wise. And I think Virginia Beach will take this game pretty easily. My score, it's a major one, even at -17, 42-17. And of course, obviously now I will hand it over to you, to Mr. E.
Yeah, big score definitely coming from this game. I think that Virginia Beach's rushing offense will be the statement that it always is. Eric Walker having the most touchdowns in the league. Kamani Moore being the one to back him up. Corey Marshall, of course, as you mentioned, he's not too impressive this season. I mean, since week 6, he hasn't put up over 150 yards. I think Tyler Bracken, the backup quarterback that started in week 10, did better, than Corey Marshall had done in weeks. So it's hard to say if Marshall just lost his touch or if something's been up. Maybe it's one of those situations like a Joe Burrow ankle injury or something. But the rest of this team's gonna have to step up. The offensive line will be missing Damian Irwin, so the offense is just a little banged up. The defensive backs are going to be missing Malcolm Riley and Julius Kelsey, so Michael Israel will fill in on the strong safety side of things. Gates Jr. will get a little bump up in the lineup, and the Virginia Beach Mariners have promoted Zayden Jenkins, who is, he hasn't seen a lot of playing time. He used to be on the Portland Grizzlies. I think this is his first playoff start. So the passing offense led by David Kreutzer, he's probably going to have an easier time than we think when he's able to get the ball off. He was able to get the ball off a few times against Memphis, who we all thought, at least I thought, was going to be headed to the championship. That was a big stinker from the Wranglers to just completely silence the Liberty like that. And it wasn't just a stop on the passing game; it was a stop on the rushing game. But you know, if that version of the Wranglers shows up, we're gonna have a lot more of a low scoring game than me and you both anticipate in our predicted scores. Um, but as far as speaking of rushing offenses goes, Jarvis Malone being really the lone running back in the Wranglers' backfield, looking like he was dragging a wagon behind him against the Liberty. Not going to be much of a rushing attack for the Wranglers. I'm seeing under 80 yards rushing for the Wranglers, but it's all going to come in the passing game. I still have a higher scoring game than even right now I think will happen. I have 35-20, all touchdowns from the Mariners, a couple field goals from Wichita. The red zone defense from the Mariners just cannot be denied. I mean, you have Desmond Cooper and Ryan Tanner attacking the outside, Matt Grimes and Joseph Toussaint all season attacking down the middle. Aiken and Givens on the outside for the linebackers, and Tucker and Coleman. Coleman with that impressive interception the last time we saw the Mariners play there in the middle for the linebacker core. But even though Virginia Beach is looking to come out on top, I wouldn't be surprised if the Wranglers end up pulling another surprise on us and coming away with a victory. It all depends, like I said, on what defense, what version of the Wranglers we see. Regardless, I don't see, and this is an early prediction. I don't see the Wranglers beating the Flames, and the Mariners against the Flames is looking like the same team is playing each other. You know, the quarterbacks occasionally see action. It's a lot of running. You got heavy defensive fronts. So whoever wins this game, it's going to look like a slugfest in the championship. But I do have Virginia Beach winning by 15.
I like all of that. That was incredible. I think that definitely does add some food for thought. Obviously, the two defenses might be showing up and, taking out some score predictions out here. I will want to state, however, before we move on, of course, the supercomputer has Virginia Beach with a 53% chance. So this game is actually even seemingly closer than what we both may think. But again, I still do believe that Virginia Beach ultimately will come out on top. I think the talent of the team is just too much. I think I would say the opposite of cohesion is what's going to undo Wichita. And I think that team is going to, of course, suffer a loss. However, I will state, if they do upset Virginia Beach, like you said, I think Orlando will blow right past them. They'll get their first ticket to the NAGA championship. I mean, it doesn't matter who would face them, St. Louis or Orlando. I think if Wichita wins here now, I think it's a matter of fact of who between Orlando or St. Louis gets to punch their ticket to the championship. So we'll go ahead and head on to our final game of the divisional round. That is, of course, the Austin Stars at the Columbus Senators. This is a clear weather, but light wind. So this could affect some kicks, some passes, but outside of that, the run games should be doing pretty well. Obviously, we, of course, have to state how Austin did lose their star running back, Terrence Flowers. He'll be out, and he'll be gone for quite a while. They're also without Josh Wainwright, who they've been without for a long time, and Chris O'Shea, who is also on the injury list. But Michael Travolta, obviously, the helm of this offense. But let's be honest, we're not really going to be talking too much about the Austin's offense when all is said and done. I honestly would like to say that this defense is what's going to be holding them together. You've got Rashawn Hicks, who's leading the middle linebacker core. You've got Marcus Justice, Jordan Ellis. Then, of course, Dan Conte, who is just incredible. And I apologize about Rashawn Hicks. The depth chart had messed me up. But I did see Rashawn Hicks this season during some Austin games. He was pretty impressive, I'm not going to lie. He's one of those elite talents. But Dan Conte is actually some say around the league, a write-in for defensive player of the conference for his specific conference. So that'll be quite interesting. Quincy, okay, well, we already messed it up. Adebawale, there we go. I was reading the D backwards as a B because my brain is dumb. I think their secondary is also a pretty interesting secondary. After you get past their second cornerback, it kind of gets dicey, but their free safety and strong safety lock everything down. You can't really talk about the Austin Stars without talking about Mr. Daniel Altamirano, who is just absolutely incredible for this team, and Justin Belts, who just knows how to punt that ball all the way back to the end zone. And of course, then you have to talk about the big bad here, the guy, the team who everyone possibly has winning it all, the Columbus Senators. Jalen Washington, the superstar quarterback, Ricky Chambers, Rashad Gaddis, the two running backs, Shaquan Ellis, DeMonte Michaels, the wide receivers, their offensive line, which just, I mean, it's just as good as Virginia Beach's when we were talking about earlier, just stacked, good, on the line, gets the blocks, gets off the pass rush. Then you look at, of course, their defensive line, and Dre Leathers has got to be the number one guy to talk about, Mr. Elite Talent over there, so he'll be carrying that side of it. You got Chad Larson, Devontae Connor, leading up in that middle of the pack of the linebackers. And then you take a look at their secondary, and this is where I think Michael Travolta is probably going to have an issue. You look at Sam Jordan and Leonard Shattuck, and they're two of the best. I think they are the two best defensive backs in the entire league. And that's not even talking about their free safety and strong safety, because you can't get past their cornerbacks. So all that being said, of course, then you have to look at the ranks, which obviously Austin did play. Obviously, Columbus did not. Michael Travolta, number 3 in quarterback rating with a 103.6. He was number 5 in attempts with 28. He had a completion rate of 39.29%. So he was only ahead of the quarterback he played in Graham Hull. So these two defenses obviously are going to do a lot of damage here. But he didn't throw an interception. And despite losing Terrence Flowers, they still held on, and they still kept the ball out of harm's way, and they were able to win it. He did throw for the least amount of yards, however. But obviously, then you have to go look at Jalen Washington, who number 1 in quarterback rating, number 15 in completion percent, number 6 in yards, tied for first in touchdowns with 21, tied 4th for interceptions with only 3. And of course, everyone has to know this one. He's number 1 in average yards per attempt with 17.3. Apologies, that's average yards per completion. So every time this man lets go of the ball and a receiver catches it, it's a first down. It's almost 2 first downs in one throw. Despite all that, despite all those stats favoring Columbus, I still have Austin's defense carrying them past this team, and I think it's going to be 26-24. I think it's going to be a lot of field goals for Austin. They're not going to be able to score a lot with Randall Young being the starting running back. But that defense is going to push Columbus back and back and back and make them punt, and it's going to give Austin a lot of favorable positions on the field, and that's going to lead to 3 and outs with a field goal, 3 and outs with a field goal. Maybe they get a lucky defensive touchdown again. And I think that's what's going to help Austin climb past Columbus, who, despite all the talent in the world, you still got to compete against this defense. And if you get forced to punt too many times behind the 50, you're inevitably going to get some good field position. And obviously, those teams that are in the playoff, they're going to punch it in, whether or not it's for 7 or 3. So that's my prediction. Austin over Columbus, 26-24, possibly the only biggest upset here of them all, with Columbus obviously being a 10-point favorite. So I think that speaks a lot of volumes. So now I'll hand it over to you, Mr. E, for this prediction.
I think my prediction will surprise no one. I think heading into this game, I feel like a lot of people might tune out at halftime. I don't think even James Tonkin, the punter for Columbus, will be in the stadium by halftime. I don't think Columbus will punt a single time, whether it is due to an Austin interception saving them from a punt, or whether it is due to the fact that Columbus will not be stopped. I mean, Jalen Washington, Ricky Chambers, you have Shaquan Ellis, DeMonte Michaels, Jeremiah Brown. Those 3 guys alone are wide receiver ones for most of the teams in this league. This offense will be unstoppable. And the Austin offense, I mean, let's not write off Tavion Harper quite yet. Last season for Delaware, 65 attempts for 246 yards and a touchdown as an RB2. I mean, that's almost 4 yards per rush. Only one fumble to add to his name. He was in the top 30, I want to say, in rushers. So he's got some experience under his belt, helping out the rookie with Randall Young starting for the Austin Stars. And honestly, at this point, I'm kind of glad that Randall Young's starting for the Stars. This team is geriatric, to put it lightly. The Austin Stars have a quarter of their roster over the age of 30, and it's going to hit them like a truck. I bet these guys still haven't healed up from last week facing Iowa. Michael Travolta is going to be on crutches walking out. All the icy hot's going to be gone from the locker room as these guys are going to pack it up. They're going to get blown out. The defense will make some stands, maybe. I do think that they'll cause a third down or two, but the offense is going nowhere. They're going to run it, and that's all the yards they're going to get. Travolta's going to get pressured, whether it's from Dre Leathers, whether it's from Michael Orsini, whether it's from Chad Larson. And if he does throw it, Shattuck, Jordan, Arthur, Whitley, those guys are going to be waiting in anticipation just to catch the ball out of thin air and put up more points, more touchdowns. I see Columbus winning 45-9. That is my prediction. I feel bad for whoever's commentating the game. I think it's going to be boring. I think we're going to end up talking about what the weather is outside in real life by the time middle of the second quarter comes around. I think that Austin had a great run. It was a nice comeback story. They've played the underdog very well, but Columbus will have another home game next week in the conference championship, whether it's against San Antonio or Portland. And that'll be a game that I think would be more worth dicing up and debating who's gonna win that one. But I see Columbus in a pretty one-sided battle against the Austin Stars.
Wow, I must say I'm I think that might be ringing true. Hopefully it doesn't. I think we'd all like to see a competitive divisional round, but you are correct. Columbus is 9-1 for a reason, and Austin is 6-4 for a completely other reason. I do want to point out, however, the supercomputer of the NAGA, this is going to shock you, E, has Columbus with a 38% chance to win. So
fake news. Fake.
So yeah, this computer is either a Austin homer and really wants them to win, or they know something that we don't, and even I don't know, because despite me picking the upset, I still have Columbus putting points up and Austin just kicking a ton of field goals. So I suppose we'll all see how that goes. I guess right now we can go ahead and pick up our predictions. Obviously, based off these scores, I will have Orlando facing Virginia Beach, and I will have Portland facing Austin in the conference championship round. Meanwhile, you have Orlando facing Virginia Beach, obviously, but then you have San Antonio facing Columbus, which would be another regular season rematch. So
we love our regular season rematches here. It's a
we love
lot
them all the
easier
time.
to analyze and make more accurate predictions. Unlike, I believe this week we have two never before happening matchups. I think Orlando, St. Louis happened. I want to say, Wichita, Virginia Beach, and Austin, Columbus both have never happened before in NAGA history. So very, very crazy reads from both of us for those two games. And you can see why there's nothing to look off of, there's a blank slate there, and we're just going to see it all unfold in this upcoming weekend.
It's going to be absolutely beautiful, and I think I'm going to enjoy us being able to look back on this a week from now, looking at this NAGA history, because hey, you never know. We could wind up with two upsets, one upset, or we could just go with the status quo and start the NAGA history off with an unsuspecting poor little flop. But I'm hoping that we get a nice little bang from Columbus and Austin. Uh, I I will say I don't expect anything from Wichita, so I don't think anything new will be coming out of there.
I
So
think if Austin ends up winning it, I think we can firmly say that God is an Austin Stars fan. I think that no matter what happens this week, that is the one truth.
hey, and you know what? If Austin wins it, it's going to be the most interesting conference championship game ever because either they're going to dominate and head back to the championship again, or they're just going to flutter and get ran all over by Portland and or San Antonio. So I guess I guess we'll see how that one goes out. But that will do it for us on this episode. Should we ever be able to do another one, we will do that. But obviously, if not, then this will be the one and only, and you guys can all archive this as a piece of history. And it's extremely rare, so maybe you can download the video and sell it for multiple thousands of dollars. Me and E will claim the rights, so we'll have royalties on this, obviously. Uh, so
Yeah, we're selling this as an NFT at an auction.
oh, it's
That's what's
great.
gonna
We're gonna
happen.
get 37 pennies from this, and and we're gonna be rolling in it. But all right, so that'll be all of it. Thank you all for watching. I am Cole. That is Mr. E. And before obviously we close this out, Mr. E, do you have any other words for us?
I just want to say, please tune into the games after watching this. If you're new, if you're an experienced subscriber, a top level subscriber to the NAGA, I think we're all anticipating some very fun games, and I guarantee you, despite my blowout predictions in this one, they're all going to be exciting to watch. And I can say without a doubt, this is the best football that you guys are going to see this month.
I can agree to that. I think this will be the best football anyone will see until the next season when we start the regular season off with another incredible bang, and hopefully we'll keep growing the community as well. So as he said, I hope you all tune in and watch these 4 amazing games. I hope you all stay tuned for the playoffs, and we will see you all next time.